I'm going to explain how we do Kanban. We actually moved to Kanban not long ago. We were using Scrum for more than 300 sprints over more than 13 years. We started back in 2005 when we founded the company. We standardized on sprints of 2 weeks, and there was a caveat on that, and we never actually delivered at the end of the sprint, but we were always doing like several releases every week. We tried to, at least, right? At the very beginning, it was not that easy, but after some time, we were actually doing a few releases every week. So the end of the sprint didn't mean that much to us, right? There was a book that actually changed everything in our case. It was Agile Project Management with Kanban. It's very easy to read. It goes really straight to the point, and we really love it here. And it was actually one of the triggers to really switch to Kanban. There are some concepts that are good to map between Scrum and Kanban. Basically, there's always a high-level planning. You don't have sprint planning anymore because you are planning all the time, like continuously deciding what is more important, what has to go into the Kanban board. You can do a daily stand-up meeting like you do in Scrum. It's a little bit different because you really focus on moving tasks forward, so it goes slightly more to the point. In our case, we are no longer doing dailies in that way. We are fully distributed, and while there's people here at the office, we are experimenting using Basecamp check-ins instead of daily sprints. We are switching and making changes there. And we don't use sprint reviews or sprint retrospectives anymore. To be honest, we were not doing them for a while, even while we were in Scrum. That's probably our fault and our mistake, but we were always working on a more continuous way, so it didn't make much sense for us to really stick into these two practices. So what's the essence of Kanban, at least on my opinion? Well, for me, the key is to limit the work in progress. Actually, it's all about restricting how many tasks can be on each phase, and I'll cover that in a second, and then focus the entire team on moving work forward fast. And that's really what changed everything for us. And of course, in getting numbers and metrics, there's also a very interesting concept, which is the lead time versus cycle time. These are the two numbers we are basically measuring, and we are focusing on cycle time. Cycle time is the time that goes since you start some work on it, you start working on a task until it goes live and it's delivered, right? Lead time, it goes beyond that and measures since you actually create the ticket or the task. I mean, a bug was reported or a new feature was entered into the system. It has a more like global view, but we really focus on since we start working on something until we actually stop it. How long does it take? How to implement Kanban? Well, we actually went for Miro. It was called Real-Time Board before, and that's actually the software we were using. And well, that's how our Kanban board looks like, right? We have like a bunch of backlog columns. I'll go back into that in more detail later on. And then we have the implement column, the review, and the validation. And we have work in progress limits. For implement, including the 3 columns, well, not lock it because it doesn't actually count, but for open and done, we have a limit of 13. So we cannot have more than 13 tasks in open state. That's very good. Then we have a limit of 2 in review and a limit of 3 in validate. What's the cycle here? Well, we have open tasks, we work on the open tasks, and then we move them to done once they are done. Once you reach the limit, the thing is that once we reach 13, there are no more tasks that can actually enter in open state. So we need to actually move this to move forward done task and actually review and then validate. The limits actually help you to avoid piling tasks, right? So at this point, for instance, if someone wants to review something, since the review is locked because we already reached the number of 2, even if they are in done, well, since that's the case, we actually need to review it, right? And what helps here is that every team member actually focus on moving the tasks forward more than actually focusing on his individual plan, which is something we did for a while, right? We were really optimizing on individual productivity, and then we changed our minds. Okay, we already can do that quite well. We can really focus and keep focus, so let's now optimize on a more global way, right? And that's how Kanban actually helped us. And then, well, The phases we use are basically the implementation, you're working on something, then we have the review, which is the code review, then validation, which is like a quick test, and once it's invalidate done, it doesn't count anymore on the work in progress limits, and from here, there's always like one of our bots actually moving the task forward, and then we have a bunch of different columns for saying something was deployed, right? So first it goes into merge state, which means it's in a candidate release for, let's say, and then it really goes into release and the counter stops, the timer stops counting once it's on a release. And then we have a release column for plasticscn.com, which is a website, semantic merge, which is our merge tool, semanticmerge.com, gmaster and gmaster.io, which are the Git clients we develop. And then we have a couple of more columns. There's something we are not doing, which is limiting the backlog. That's something we did before, but we didn't actually standardize on that. So it's sort of room for improvement for us. There's something you can focus on here, and is that for every card, we have a number, which is the task number on our issue tracker. We put a picture of the developer, and then we put a number, which is the number of days the task has been open. So we have like a super clear view of the status of the board at every moment. And we put it on green when the task took less than, when the number is less than 4 or 5, and then we turn it to red, saying, okay, it's taking longer than the actual average we want to hit for cycle time. And the task number, well, if you look into that, that's basically our task in our issue tracking system. So this, for instance, a task that is open at this point, and well, it's an internal system, it's like a Jira or something like that. It's not as complete as that because something completely internal for us. We tried to switch to a different system many times, we never ended up doing it. And here we track things like estimation, like the actual work time. We put comments. This is like a new task, so it doesn't have a lot of detail, but we put comments in here, so explaining it, like everything and so on. And of course, as we normally recommend, we do it ourselves. We create a branch for each task. Let's look a little bit back, because we didn't start using a Miro this way. In fact, we started with a more standard setup. We started with a single column for backlog, and then a specify column with a WIP, work in progress limit of 20, which is meant to be something limiting the actual working implement. But after some experimentation, we moved a little bit, and then we create more deploy columns instead of just one as we started. And then finally, we just unified the entire backlog into a single column. And after that, after having like a multi-line thing, because we start piling up a lot of stuff, we just clean it up, as you saw in the final version, where we just have a single column, and we try to keep things as simple as possible. What are the results? Well, for us, the results were quite good. I'm showing here some numbers from our last sprints using Scrum, and also the sprints where we are using Kanban. Well, something fun is that we still use bi-weekly let's say time frames to actually measure time. It's not that we are doing Scrum or anything, but we are so used to actually say, okay, we're in sprint 300, 301 or something, that we still use it. So if you compare the numbers, you'll see something very interesting. Is that we moved from actually 752 in average to 366 days in cycle time, right? And I'm counting net cycle time, which is like the time from when a task starts till it gets deployed, but not counting weekends or holidays, right? So that's what we call net cycle time. And it's actually a speed up of 2, which is quite good. And that's actually what we wanted to achieve when we started moving. So those are the numbers we got, and we are happy to share with you. Well, if you want to learn more about how we work, about our products, about how we do DevOps, I would like to invite you to go to our documentation page and download our PDF for a version control book, and hope you enjoy it.